Well, joining me live now for more on this is US Studies Centre Director of Research, Jared Mondschein. Jared, thanks for your time. Much less eventful than 4 years ago. A tough defeat there for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, very much so. This was just I think, a 36-minute affair overall, and this is really what many were expecting it to be. I should note, though, that this was not done in the same way that it was 4 years ago, or even planned to be done 4 years ago. As much as people like to say that the U.S. is a nation of laws, in some ways there are still some norms in the democratic processes. And what happened since 4 years ago, since January 6, 2021, is the Electoral Count Reform Act. And basically, they clarified all the roles and they tried to get rid of all the loopholes that led to a lot of the questions that Donald Trump is still raising to this day. So not only was it a simple affair, but it was also a more clear affair than it was 4 years ago because of the reforms that have taken place since then.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, a lot calmer. How will Inauguration Day play out, do you think?
Yeah, Inauguration Day, I think, will also be a more sedate affair and probably be not as contentious as it was 4 years ago. I think we shouldn't forget where the United States was 4 years ago in the peak of COVID deaths, with many deaths, hundreds, if not thousands of deaths every day from COVID in January 2021, and how we are no longer there, but also we are no longer, weeks from another insurrection. And so I think it will be a very different affair. With that said, I think it will probably be more colorful than the Biden inauguration, because those same characters who are passionate about supporting Donald Trump in 2021 are most likely going to be back in this month in DC for Inauguration Day. And so I think if looking at the Republican National Convention is any indication of the diversity of support for Donald Trump, we will likely see a far more colorful and interesting crowd at this inauguration than we did 4 years ago.
It's going to be a big year. Many people are saying it's going to be a complex year, many different issues that Trump will have to address. I mean, his presidency will have wider ramifications right across foreign relations, including, of course, China, Russia, Iran and North Korea, our allies, including Europe and the UK, and global bodies like the UN, which Trump has been critical of for a very long time. What are you most concerned about, Jared?
I think the number one thing that we should look at with the Trump administration is the economic agenda. Donald Trump has not been consistent in terms of policies in many areas. You can only look at his debates about the H-1B visa in the United States to see how his view of immigration policy has evolved over time. And so I think that as much as he has been hard to sort of understand and predict, the one area where there has been continuity and consistency over decades, even long before his political career began, it is trade policy. The way that he talks about China now, in my view, is very reminiscent to how he talked about Japan in the 1980s. He has been protectionist and he has been interested in tariffs and looking at the trade balance as sort of indicative of economic and geopolitical might since for the 80s, since he's been in the public eye. So the way that U.S. allies and partners and the globe at large manages a tough to predict Trump administration on trade, I think is the most consequential for what happens over the next 4 years.
Well, let's talk about that, because obviously the looming tariffs on Canada have played some kind of role in Justin Trudeau's resignation here. What do you make of him stepping aside? Of course, Donald Trump threatening those 25% tariffs when he takes office on Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trudeau was facing challenges long before even Donald Trump won the election. And I think Trudeau stepping down is indicative of one more incumbent facing the wrath of their local population. I mean, Kamala Harris did it as the vice president of the incumbent government in the United States, but you can look at elections in Korea, in Japan, in Europe, and even new governments in the UK. No one is doing well in terms of incumbents, and arguably the most popular democratically elected leader in the world, in India, and Modi even faced his own electoral setback a few months ago. So I think incumbent governments everywhere have not been doing well, and Trudeau is just the latest victim of that challenge to incumbent governments. So I think that is probably his political challenges there are probably far larger than just anything between himself and Donald Trump.
And also, of course, we've got these very public beefs being played out on social media platform X between Elon Musk and also Keir Starmer's government at the moment. What do you make of all of that?
Yeah, I think Elon Musk is using his platform that he owns to his own benefit and to draw more attention to himself. I don't think he's the type who has ever shunned attention or shunned the limelight. If anything, he's sought it, and he now has more of an audience with the Oval Office, or the future Oval Office, than he ever could have probably imagined. But he also is throwing his weight around in the UK. In many ways, the UK is in a far different situation now than it was just a couple of years ago with Boris Johnson and a conservative government. Now that you have a Labour left of center government in London, I think that changes the dynamics in the way that an increasingly conservative Musk views the UK as a whole.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year ahead, that's for sure. Jared, thanks for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.